paintings remain undiminished. If it still is amazing, and it is, to stand before one of the canvases that changed everything, then to stand before many of them, some gathered together for the first time, is just transfixing. He did change everything. Most especially, he changed the very idea of the portrait. Not all at once, of course. It took time. To wander through Picasso and portraiture at the Museum of Modern Art in New York is to leaf through the intimate and complex details of the artist's long and prodigious life. The exhibition, which began last week and runs through mid-September, starts out simply enough with portraits of his parents and his sister Lola. The year was 1896. Pablo Picasso was 14. But not too long afterwards, Picasso began to change the definition of portrait art.
The painter worked the person who was in the picture. Picasso makes his portrait for himself. Now this...
William Rubin is the Museum of Modern Art's director emeritus. He is also an ardent admirer and was a friend of Picasso's.
He makes them to see how he feels and what he thinks about these people. They don't get the pictures, they don't buy them, and he doesn't sell them to them.
More than 200 Picasso portraits are on view. Almost half of them have never before been exhibited in the United States.
What makes Picasso a monumental figure, in part, is that he's the first painter in the history to transcend the notion of style. That is to say, Picasso used anywhere between 20 and 200 different styles when he painted. This picture is the first major oil painting he did of Olga, and we might say it celebrates their marriage in 1917. Let's say the first major phase of the Olga paintings is neoclassical, but at the same time, he is painting Cubist paintings.
But this was Olga.
This was Olga, and what is interesting about this is that we did some infrared scans of this picture, and we discovered that underneath it is a neoclassical picture in which Olga is perfectly visible, and then gradually Picasso turned it into a Cubist picture, keeping a lot of the elements from the original picture. For example, the back of the chair. This picture, which is an exquisite pastel, probably the most beautiful of all the pictures of Olga, is also neoclassical, but you can see that the classical style has changed. Instead of that flat Ingresque style of 1917, by 1921, he's looking at the Renaissance painters of the 15th century, at antique classical statuary, and the head becomes much more sculptural. Now, Olga and Picasso had a son, who you see over here, little Pablo, and...
Rubin pointed out that when Picasso started out painting a mother and son portrait, the mother ended up looking nothing like Olga. Rubin discovered that the mystery face belonged to an American named Sarah Murphy.
Now, Sarah was a very beautiful woman, and Hemingway was in love with her at one point, and Picasso fell in love with her, and the climax of that love was the summer of 1923, when this photograph was taken, which was found among Picasso's papers. Now, if you look carefully, Sarah is wearing a turban, and this huge drawing, which is extremely rare in Picasso's work, that drawing was made from that photograph.
It's the same turban?
Yes.
Picasso makes a series of classical pictures extolling Sarah. What is most revealing about Picasso's portraits is how the artist viewed his women.
She looks terribly sad. And
one needs no words to describe the deterioration of Picasso's marriage to Olga.
But she's, we might say, demonized. She becomes a harpy, screaming at Picasso, angry, jealous. He painted this incredible picture of a seated bather, It shows you a hard, bony woman whose back looks like a turtle shell, and the head is like a praying mantis. That's the little bug that where the female devours the male in the act of sex. And the jaws come together like a vice. It's a very aggressive, monstrous image. And Picasso, in a conversation with me, said that it was inspired by Olga. Compare that to this picture. This is Marie-Thérèse Voltaire, who, since things didn't work out with Sarah, a few years later became Picasso's great love and remains. There are some pictures, like the one on the wall over there, which are quite realistic of Marie-Thérèse, and some that are abstract and more cubist, like that one. This one is a more surrealist Marie-Thérèse.
Not bony.
Not bony, very squeezable, soft, and aerial.
Picasso is perhaps more definable by the women in his life than any shift in style, and the Marie-Thérèse period was extremely productive. This is one that you would never realize that it was a portrait unless...
Well, in a sense, it isn't a portrait. Picasso quite consciously made this as an evocation of Marie-Thérèse, using metaphors which are very common in art and literature for a woman's body.
Picasso and Marie-Thérèse had a daughter, Maya, and these pictures, made in 1938, indicate no family strain. But a year later, Picasso painted these two portraits on the same day. One is of a soft and curvy Marie-Thérèse. The other is of his new lover, a tense but more intellectual Dora Maar. It was a complicated relationship that suffered the strains of war.
There are, for example, pictures of Dora Maar where she's almost death-like, like a skull. Now, that isn't because he thought she was death, but because he and Dora Maar were holed up in a hotel room with the invading Nazi armies all around them in the town of Royan, and he felt compressed, worried, anxious, frightened.
There's much more to this show. The Françoise Gillot years, she the flower. Herself an artist. They have two children, Claude and Paloma. Then she leaves him. Finally, for the last 20 years of his life, Picasso's last great love and his second wife, Jacqueline Roch, with whom he creates the largest group of portraits in the largest variety of styles, right to the end in 1973.
He showed me his new work. He was now 91 at the time, but he'd lift up these great big canvases. He wouldn't let me touch them, never let anyone touch his painting. And he would move them from place to place and so forth.
And there's the man himself, Picasso, young, brash, macho, and then in 1972, old and frightened, staring death in the face.